Some footballers spend their entire careers trying to prove themselves. Others never have to. From the moment Nicolas Anelka stepped onto a football pitch, everyone knew he was different. Quick, elegant, ice-cold in front of goal. A striker who never looked rushed, even when the whole stadium held its breath. He would win league titles across Europe, lift the UEFA Champions League, become a Premier League Golden Boot winner, play for some of the biggest clubs in football history. And yet, despite everything he achieved, he remains one of football's most misunderstood figures. This is the story of Nicolas Anelka. Football has always loved easy stories. The loyal one-club legend, the local hero, the captain, the villain. Nicolas Anelka never fitted into any of those categories. He wasn't interested in creating an image. He simply wanted to play football. That made him difficult for many people to understand. Born on the 14th of March, 1979 in Le Chesnay, just outside Paris, Anelka grew up in Trappes, a suburb that produced talented footballers but demanded resilience. Football wasn't just a pastime. It was a way of standing out, a way of escaping, a way of proving yourself. From an early age, Anelka's talent was impossible to ignore. His speed was frightening, his first touch effortless, his finishing instinctive. But perhaps his greatest weapon was his composure. Even as a teenager, he played with the calm of a veteran. That talent soon caught the attention of Paris Saint-Germain, one of France's biggest clubs. It seemed the perfect place for one of the country's brightest young prospects. But another man had already recognized something extraordinary: Arsène Wenger. The Arsenal manager believed English football had never seen a striker quite like Nicolas Anelka. In 1997, he brought the teenager to North London. Few realized they were witnessing the beginning of one of football's most fascinating careers. English football was faster, more physical, less forgiving. Young foreign players often struggled to adapt. Anelka looked as though he'd been playing there his whole life. His pace terrified defenders. His movement created space that others couldn't see. He drifted into dangerous positions without attracting attention. Then, in a single burst, he was gone. It wasn't just speed. It was intelligence. He rarely wasted energy. Every run had a purpose. Every touch had a destination. The breakthrough came quickly. Ian Wright was Arsenal's established hero. But as Wright moved towards the latter stages of his Arsenal career, Anelka stepped forward without fear. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flamboyant. He simply scored. Again. And again. And again. Supporters soon gave him a nickname: Le Sulk. Many believed it reflected his personality. Quiet. Reserved. Distant. But those closest to him often told a different story. Anelka wasn't arrogant. He was private. There is a difference. The 1997-98 season changed everything. Arsenal were chasing history. Manchester United stood in their way. Pressure surrounded every match. For most teenagers, it would have been overwhelming. For Nicolas Anelka, it became an opportunity. He produced goals when Arsenal needed them most. His pace stretched defenses. His finishing settled nerves. His maturity shocked experienced professionals. By the end of the season, Arsenal had completed a famous Premier League and FA Cup double. The teenager from Paris had become one of England's brightest stars. Europe had taken notice. Suddenly, every major club wanted Nicolas Anelka. Real Madrid came calling. The biggest club in world football. For many players, there would be no decision to make. When Real Madrid asked, "You listen." In 1999, Anelka left Arsenal after just 2 remarkable seasons. Many supporters couldn't understand it. Why leave so soon? Why leave a manager who believed in you? Why leave a team that was winning? Those questions would follow him for the rest of his career. Madrid promised glamour, prestige, Galacticos before the Galacticos. But football doesn't always follow the script. In Spain, the goals didn't flow as easily. The media scrutiny became relentless. Every performance was analyzed. Every interview became a headline. Every quiet moment was mistaken for unhappiness. For the first time in his career, Nicolas Anelka wasn't simply fighting defenders. He was fighting perception. The world had started writing its own version of Nicolas Anelka. The problem was, it wasn't always the truth. The football world thought it had already made up its mind. Nicolas Anelka was difficult, restless, impossible to manage. But managers saw something different. They saw a striker blessed with extraordinary talent, a player capable of deciding the biggest matches, a footballer worth taking a chance on, again, and again, and again. Despite everything that had happened in Madrid, one night reminded Europe exactly why Real Madrid had signed him. The UEFA Champions League, football's biggest stage, against Bayern Munich. Anelka delivered when the pressure was at its highest. His goals helped send Real Madrid to the final. Weeks later, they lifted the European Cup. Even in the most difficult period of his career, he had proved he could perform when it mattered most. But success on the pitch couldn't repair everything behind the scenes. His time in Spain came to an end. The journey continued. Back in France, Paris Saint-Germain welcomed him home. Many believed returning to familiar surroundings would finally bring stability. Instead, the questions continued. Every transfer, every interview, every decision, only added to the mystery surrounding Nicolas Anelka. Was he searching for the perfect club, or simply somewhere he could be himself? In 2002, Liverpool came calling. Manager Gerard Houllier believed Anelka deserved another opportunity in English football. For a few months, it looked like the perfect reunion. The intelligent movement was still there. The calm finishing. The effortless pace. Liverpool supporters wanted him to stay. But football had other ideas. The move was never made permanent. Once again, Anelka was packing his bags. His next destination was Manchester City. Long before the trophies. Long before the billions. Manchester City needed a leader. They found one in Nicolas Anelka. Week after week, he carried the attack. Goals became expected. Defenders knew exactly who the danger was. Stopping him proved far more difficult. He finished as the club's top scorer and reminded the Premier League that his talent had never disappeared. Only the headlines had suggested otherwise. Then came another unexpected chapter. Turkey. Fenerbahçe. Many questioned the move. Anelka answered in the only way he knew how. By scoring goals. He helped Fenerbahçe lift the Turkish league title and once again showed that wherever he went, he found success. Different country. Different language. Same Nicolas Anelka. Then, in 2006, England called once more. Not Arsenal. Not Liverpool. Bolton Wanderers. To some, it looked like another step backwards. To Sam Allardyce, it was the signing of a world-class striker. For the first time in years, Anelka looked completely free. There were no Galacticos. No impossible expectations. No daily headlines questioning his future. Just football. And when football became the only story, Nicolas Anelka reminded everyone exactly how good he really was. His confidence returned. His smile returned. Bolton supporters adored him. Not because he chased attention, but because he never needed it. His football spoke louder than any newspaper ever could. The same football world that had questioned him for years was suddenly asking a different question. Had they judged Nicolas Anelka too quickly? One club certainly thought so. Chelsea. A club chasing Premier League titles, European glory, and searching for a striker capable of delivering in the biggest moments. For Nicolas Anelka, another opportunity had arrived. Not to prove he was talented. Everyone already knew that. This time, he had the chance to prove that great years were still ahead of him. One final opportunity. One final chance. To change the way football remembered Nicolas Anelka. By the time he arrived at Stamford Bridge in January 2008, He was no longer the teenage wonderkid. No longer the player every newspaper wanted to criticize. He was experienced, wiser, and ready for the biggest challenge of his career. Chelsea already possessed world-class players. John Terry, Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba, Michael Ballack, Ashley Cole. This wasn't a team looking for potential. It demanded success. Immediately, Anelka understood exactly what was expected. Goals, trophies, pressure. It was everything he'd experienced before. Only this time, he looked completely at ease. His first season almost ended in glory. Chelsea reached the 2008 UEFA Champions League final. A dramatic night in Moscow. After extra time, the final went to penalties. Anelka stepped forward. His penalty was saved. Manchester United became European champions. For many players, that moment would define them forever. For Nicolas Anelka, it became another chapter in a career built on resilience. He didn't hide. He came back stronger. The following season, he produced the finest football of his career. Confident, clinical, consistent. Week after week, the goals kept coming. Defenders couldn't match his movement. Goalkeepers couldn't predict his finishing. He wasn't simply scoring. He was leading Chelsea's attack. By the end of the campaign, Nicolas Anelka was the Premier League's Golden Boot winner. A remarkable achievement, especially for a player so many believed had already reached his peak years before. Football had questioned him. He answered with goals. Success continued to follow. Chelsea lifted the Premier League title in 2010. They added the FA Cup to complete a famous domestic double. Anelka had become exactly what every manager who signed him believed he could be. Reliable. Experienced. A winner. Perhaps. The football world was finally beginning to appreciate him. His international career told a different story. Representing France had brought unforgettable highs. He was part of the squad that won UEFA Euro 2000, adding another major international honor to an already remarkable career. But with France, controversy always seemed close behind. That reached its peak at the 2010 FIFA World Cup in South Africa. An argument with coach Raymond Domenech exploded into one of the biggest controversies in French football history. Anelka was sent home. The squad refused to train. France became front-page news for all the wrong reasons. Once again, the headlines focused on Nicolas Anelka, not the footballer, the man. For many people, that became the lasting image. But was it fair? Because when the noise faded, the facts remained. League champion in England, league champion in France, league champion in Turkey, Champions League winner, Premier League Golden Boot winner, UEFA European Championship winner, hundreds of goals, hundreds of appearances, a career that most professionals could only dream of. Yet somehow, the conversation always seemed to return to controversy. Perhaps that says more about football than it does about Nicolas Anelka. After Chelsea, his career took him to China, Italy, India, continuing to share his experience across the world before eventually moving into coaching. The hunger to compete never truly disappeared. Football had been his life. It always would be. Today, people still debate Nicolas Anelka. Some remember the transfers. Some remember the headlines. Some remember the controversy. But football isn't played in newspapers. It's played on grass. And when Nicolas Anelka stepped onto a football pitch, there were very few players who could do what he could. His pace, his movement, his composure, his finishing, his intelligence. For more than 2 decades, they made defenders' lives a nightmare. Perhaps Nicolas Anelka wasn't always the easiest player to understand. Perhaps he wasn't always the easiest player to manage. But one thing was never in doubt. He could play. He won league titles across Europe. He became a Champions League winner, a Premier League champion, a Premier League Golden Boot winner, a European champion with France. And everywhere he went, managers kept believing in him. Because they all recognized the same thing. An extraordinary footballer. History will always remember the headlines. But those who watched Nicolas Anelka every single week will remember something far more important. One of the most naturally gifted strikers of his generation. A player who could glide past defenders, finish with either foot, and make the hardest game in the world look effortless. Maybe Nicolas Anelka wasn't the easiest player to handle. Maybe he wasn't the easiest player to understand. But there was one thing nobody could ever question. Just how good he was. And that is why Nicolas Anelka will always remain a true footballing icon. Where does Nicolas Anelka rank among the greatest strikers his era?